Hello, I'm Ron Sheldon. I'm the Technical Department Manager here at Sound Off Signal. At Sound Off Signal, we pride ourselves on providing excellent customer service and technical support to our customers. The technical video you're about to watch, we hope you find it beneficial in the operation and use of our products. Should you have any questions, please phone us or email us. So let's get started. Today we're going to talk about the EPX 3000, commonly known as the Apex Lightbar, its operation and setup. Now you're going to get your light bar pretty much the way it looks right here in front of you. The only difference is your feet will not be put on, and neither one of these air dams will be put on. For right now I've got the feet put on just for the sake of the demonstration here, and I have the air dams taken off. They typically just slide right up in this fashion here and are screwed on the underside. But they go on last after you adjust your foot, where your foot needs to be and that type of adjustment, so they're the last thing that go on. But these guys are put on at that point there. Now what also comes with your light bar is your breakout box and your 24-pin harness that plugs in to this side of your breakout box. You'll wind up having a data cable that comes with it that plugs into your breakout box, and you have a power cable in a 10-gauge wire that is for your power and ground for your light bar. You also wind up getting an instruction sheet with your light bar. It'll look like this. This is the front cover. You open it up, and inside on page 2 you will find the specifications. This is a spec page which calls this out. This is a 10 to 16 volt unit. There is also a 10 to 30 volt Apex bar that's available. It calls out the current draw for each module, input and corners, and various application specs and current draws that you'll find. If we flip back to page 10, I'm skipping over the mechanical installation pages of the light bar. As we go to page 10 in the instruction sheet, it talks about pattern setup, mode application, changing your modes, and your cruise functions. The next page over, page 11. Page 11 shows you the breakout box. The breakout box wire connections, what wire color, and what function that wire color controls. It also gives you a pinout of your 24-pin connector, and it explains dip switch settings and normal operation of your breakout box. On page 12 is where we get into the patterns. What patterns are available for warning function, for takedown flash function, for arrow function. They're all located on this page here. In the bottom corner here is a table that represents the switch connections or the switch settings of your dip switch settings in the light bar. Now, those are located, we pop the lid off. The lid actually has 3 screws that you remove to remove the lid. They take a T25 torque bit. You remove these 3 screws, and the lid itself is actually hooked underneath the front module. So you can't come straight up with it. You have to slide it back and take it off in that fashion there. Now, those dip switch settings I was referring to are located inside the light bar. The dip switch is in between the 2 connectors here in the upper part of the board, and 1 is on this side, 6 is on this side over here. As we're looking at it, up is on, down is off. Now, the first few dip switches on here control how many modules are going to come on with your arrow. You can set it up for 4 mod, 5 mod, 6 mod, 7 mod arrow, depending upon the length of your light bar and how many modules you want to have come on for your arrow function. Or you can set your dip switch settings so that no arrow comes on at all. Now, the next switch down is switch 4 after those, and 4 will set up the polarity. You can switch it from right to left or left to right. depending upon your application and what you may need to do. That means that if I turn on my right arrow, it may go the opposite direction, depending upon that dip switch setting. Dip switch number 5 controls whether I'm going to have a solid arrow or a split arrow in the back, depending upon what type of modules I ordered with the bar. And dip switch number 6 controls left turn, right turn signal output and which wire works that, which wire turns that particular on, and that we refer to the flag or the color on the wire, which one will control that. And that's located right between here is where that dip switch settings are. Now, we're going to go through the operation of this bar, but first I want to talk about the breakout box a little bit more. The breakout box takes that 24-pin connector and it snaps in to this side here. Now, the key is making sure that thing plugs in securely and snaps. The tab snaps really good and you have a really good connection. Wiggle that a little bit when you're doing so. On the other side of the breakout box is your RJ45 connector. That's where you connect your data cable from your light bar into that particular port. Right next to that are 2 dip switches. These dip switches control whether a 12-volt signal input is going to turn on that function or a ground switch input is going to turn on that function. So either I can have this ground switched or positive switched. And they're controlled by these 2 dip switches right here. Up is positive, down is ground. Next to that are 2 LEDs. And I'm going to plug this in. And as you see, the green LED came on. That tells me that I'm getting power to my breakout box. The red one will wind up flashing about every 5 seconds, telling me that it's sitting there waiting for an input. I apply an input to this, one of the wires. The red light came on steady. Okay, I remove it, it goes off. Now, for the sake of our application here and for setup, I'm going to use this switch box right here. Basically, I'm duplicating every one of the inputs on my breakout box. There's 24 of them. And should you have a fleet of vehicles, you've got 10, 20, 30 bars, this is the way to go. We sell this box for roughly about $100. And this is the way to go to set up your bars consistently. Once you're set up, plug your breakout box in and you've already got your flash pattern set, your application set, and how you want it to go by this switch box. So this is what we're going to be using for the testing purposes. Let me verify here. Let me plug in my data cable. And I'm going to turn on my end cap. Like I'd said before, this box duplicates every one of the inputs from our breakout box. So I've got my end caps and my front inboards turned on, and I'm going to change patterns. Changing patterns is done by applying 12 volts or momentarily touching 12 volts to the white wire on your breakout box, and I'm going to do so by my switch right here. And every time I do that, I'm going to change the pattern of only the lights that are turned on. It does not affect any other lights that are off. So only the ones that are turned on will be affected. That is how we change patterns. Now, I'm going to walk you through the cruise function. Cruise function is designed to have light modules turned on, about 60% power, and dim. Solid but dim. And I'm going to show you how that's done. I'm going to turn on my 4 corners. I'm going to apply 12 volts to my cruise wire input, and I'm going to use my pattern change wire to turn them on or off. Think of the pattern change wire as a switch. It'll either turn those lights on for cruise function or it will shut them off. So if I momentarily apply 12 volts to my white wire on my breakout box, I turn off those modules, and then I turn my cruise back on, applying 12 volts to it. They're on in cruise. And every time I apply 12 volts to that input, they're going to come on steady, burn, and slightly dim, about 60% intensity. Now I can turn on any modules on my light bar for that cruise function. It does not have to be just the corners. The next thing we want to walk through is mode select. Mode select is utilized for getting two separate warning patterns from the same lights being turned on. And what happens is I'm going to turn on my corners and my front inboards. And let's say I'm in code 1, code 2, and I've got just a normal eye-catching pattern going. And then all of a sudden I go in full pursuit mode, code 3. When I do that, I can just apply 12 volts to my mode input, and this is bar's already set up for this. When I do that, instantly I have a whole nother set of patterns for my lights I have turned on, a little bit more radical, a little bit more eye-catching to get people to get out of my way and see me coming. I remove the 12 volts from that, and it goes back down to the normal pattern that was there. Now, when I have that turned on, I can change that pattern also. Whatever pattern I want that to operate under, just by applying 12 volts momentarily to the white wire. So whatever pattern I want the mode 2 or my warning 2 patterns to be, I can do that. I remove that, I go back to my pattern that it was set up originally. That's the mode select. We have another function that's called low power. Now these light bars are extremely bright, and at night, lots of times when you're either in a pursuit situation and a vehicle is behind you and you're kind of blinding that officer behind you, or you're on scene at a fire call and you've got a lot of other personnel around, or you're at a traffic stop and you have somebody pulled over. Once that's done, you can apply 12 volts to the low power input, and it will dim your bar down so it's not so blinding. All you have to do is apply 12 volts to that particular wire on your breakout box, and it dims down. Take it off, you go back to full power. Apply 12 volts, you dim down. Now, this bar is set up for a split arrow. And I'm going to show you that application right now. I'm going to flip this over and show you the arrow in the back. Right now we're set up for split. This is a 6 LED module, and as you notice, it's kind of every other one is coming on in each module. There's 3 LEDs in each module coming on for your arrow. Now once you have your arrow turned on, you can change that arrow pattern by applying 12 volts to the white wire, and it will change through the arrow patterns and give you an arrow pattern. Now if I have my warning turned on, you notice that the other 3 interlaced LEDs within the module are being turned on. Keep in mind that if I have warning turned on and I turn on arrow, arrow overrides warning. Arrow will override warning. Now as I mentioned before, that dip switch settings in there, I can go from solid arrow to split arrow. And I'm going to change the dip switch setting on number 5, which controls that. And when I change the dip switch setting in here, one of the things I have to do for that to take is I have to cycle the power. So I'm going to cycle the power to my light bar so that it takes my change. If I don't do this, it will not take the change that I made on that dip switch setting. Now I've changed the dip switch, I cycle the power, and because this module is blue and amber, red and amber, it's going to look a little bit strange, okay? You get a lot of bleeding. But I want to just demonstrate that you can have solid arrow with all LEDs coming on, or you can have a split mod having warning functions and arrow, keeping in mind you always still have arrow warning. So you won't lose your warning function completely if you don't use a split mod. I'm going to switch this back, like this, cycle power. And then I'll be back to my split arrow again, and I'll show that to you. And like I had mentioned, I can still have an arrow warning. And in this situation, still have my red-blue warning too. So it gives you a little bit of versatility in that regard. I'll show you the takedown and takedown flash functions at this time. Takedown flash is this here, and just by applying 12 volts momentarily to the white wire on your breakout box will change your takedown flash. It does have a steady burn function on there also, and that'll change. Remembering that takedown solid is going to override flash every time. So if I've got takedowns going flashing, I turn down my steady burn takedowns, it's going to override and shut those off. Now that's pretty much the setup and operation of your Apex light bar. Should you have any questions or concerns regarding the operations, the setup, changing patterns, setting up mode select, please contact the technical service department at Sound Off Signal, and one of the technicians there will help answer your questions or help guide you through whatever difficulty you may be having. Thank you very much.